What's up, guys? Chris here from Signs of Life. How y'all doing out there? What a time to be alive, huh? It's really good to see you guys. We got a bunch of people in the house today, and I couldn't be more excited to be bringing you an ambient masterclass on a Sunday. It's a sunny California day. I'm feeling great. I'm so glad that you guys are here. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I've got a really special show for you today called Conversational Ambient. Thoughts around the idea of ambient music as a conversation. I see a lot of my best friends all up in the house. Big Click, Star Maze, Shelby Studios, Ralph, Isle Flow, The Cube, Scott Garman, Into the City, The Amba Vibe, Sci-Fi Universe, NFS, ROM22, welcome back. And an iPhone is here. A phone. That's all we need, it's just a phone. Man, this is gonna be a special one. I've had this one in my mind for a while now, and it's just like the right, you have a feeling, you have an intuitive feeling in times like this when you just know when the right time to do something is, when the right time to act is, and now more than ever, I think it's important for us to speak out, and do the right thing. So I am ready to go. I'm fired up, man. I'm fired up that you guys are here. So I'm gonna hit the loop button and we're gonna get into the stream and let's get going. So anyway, this is Conversational Ambient, an ambient masterclass by Signs of Life. And what we're gonna do here is we're gonna go slide by slide, and I'm gonna give you guys my perspective on conversational ambient. Now, if you don't know what this is, that's why you're here. So I encourage you guys to kick back, enjoy, and I am going to get started here. Now, this is going to be slide number 1. Now, before I start, it would be remiss of me not to recognize the horrendous tragedy that is happening on the planet right now. So I just want to say to everyone who is personally affected by this, directly or indirectly, my heart goes out to you. It's not just one side or the other side. It's not just one country. It's everyone around there. It's people who are taking on others. It's everyone's lives are changing, and it is something that I think we all feel very deeply and on a transformative level. And so I just want to say that my heart goes out to you. And I think the best way, and I want to say this because I'm up on a soapbox right now, the best way that you can deal with this, the best way that you can sort of handle it in your own way, is by being the light, shining the light into the darkness. Because what happens to darkness as soon as you introduce a light, it dissolves, it disappears. So where there is darkness, there will always be light. Yet, if you are light, whether that's every day, that's who you are as a person, that's what you do, it's the music that you bring out to the world, it's your gifts, it's everything about the essence of you. If that is your light and you bring that light to the world each and every day, that is the best way. And that's why I'm doing this ambient masterclass today, because I feel that if we all become that light, then we can push back the darkness. So that's why I'm here, and that's why we're doing this, and I'm doing this because this is what I do. This is what I know how to do. Therefore, it is my way. of shining that light into the dark. Okay? So that's what I'll say about that right now. So onwards and upwards, and again, my heart goes out to everyone, but like I said, the best way is to keep doing what you're doing and do it well, and that will positively affect everyone around you. And it ripples through the universe. Your voice and that inner voice, that sound that you make, that's your essence. That's who you are. That's your gift to the world. So I am here to help you guys bring out the best voices that you possibly can, and we're going to do that today. So Ambient Masterclass, Conversational Ambient. Now, as I go into this, may I remind you that the best way to support this channel is by joining my Patreon, and the notes of these classes are going to be shared exclusively on Patreon moving forward. So if you want to support me and support my journey to becoming a full-time ambient music and content creator, that's the way to do it. And I say this because this is what I want to be doing, like full-time moving forward. And the only way I'm going to get there is this way. So we already got a lot of people signed up there, and there's already a bunch of content on there, and thank you guys for being here. I truly appreciate it. So Conversational Ambient. Now, a lot of the notes from today are going to come from conversations that I've had with my partner Don. I mean, over the past 10 years of producing ambient exclusively, I've been producing music for almost 30 years now. But the past 10 years, I've been zeroed in on ambient music, and that has brought me more joy, more personal accomplishment than I could have ever imagined. I've never really, like, as soon as I discovered ambient, I was like, that was it. It was lock to key. It was like that was the end game for me, and I knew it. Every fiber of my being knew that this was exactly what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And so it took, because I came from sort of an outside perspective, I had to kind of like wrap my head around every single facet of it in order to gain a fully comprehensive understanding of what ambient is. And, you know, this is something that develops over time. You don't just walk into it one day. It happens over time. So whatever point of the journey that you're on, accept that and say, we all have farther to go. Because once you stop learning, that's it. That's the end of the road. So if you always continue to maintain that mind of a beginner, as Shunryu Suzuki once said, then you'll never stop learning. Life forever. So, on that note, the start of the conversation. If you think about ambient music as like a conversation, it's the interplay of elements building an organic way to form a conversation between the elements themselves and the listener. And what this does is, if you think about when you have a conversation with someone, it starts off very simple, introductions, and then it moves into other forms of communication, and it gets more interesting, and it goes in different directions. So this creates an environment of interaction, interplay, and then interest. And when we talk about ambient music, we talk about the elements themselves. I mean, what are they? They're synthesizers, they're basses, they're percussion elements, they're environmental elements. Sometimes they're just samples themselves, right? And all of these different elements are weaving themselves in and out within another to form a fabric. And that fabric is akin to like weaving a basket. It's how it all comes together, okay? So as we are elements of the light and of elements themselves, right? We are the elements that create this fabric. Our music can be the same thing. So they say art reflects reality, right? So this is the way we build up these tracks, these fabrics. Because, you know, other forms of music have different structures, but ambient music is a formless structure almost. You can form it and shape it any way you want, and that's one of the things that draws me into it. So at the start of a conversation, you don't need to complicate things. You don't need to wrap yourself around with just like, you know, it's starting simple and building off simple ideas is the best way to introduce a theme, subtly. And then eventually you can start tying those things together. So by keeping things simple and minimal at the beginning, it allows you to use subtle harmonic cues, right? And introductions to build complexity over time. For example, we've been listening to a pad that I made on the Hydrosynth. I'm really proud of this pad. I mean, this is like, I was like, well, as soon as I finally fixed this pad, I was like, yes, this is it. Like, I was really happy. This is one pad on the Hydra. And it's an interplay between different movement of envelopes and the filter movement, and you can see it has that really organic, and the left and the right stereo fields are doing different things at different times. And I laid this down, I was like, yes, that's the shape. But listen what happens when I start introducing another element, okay? I have this on my push here, listen. Huh? You feel what I'm saying? So we're thinking atmosphere, mystery, intrigue. What is this world that we're starting to create? And this all goes back to this profound idea that Don and I have been back and forth on. Architecture. Sound architecture. Building your structures up like an architect would, from the ground up. So each layer becomes a different part of the structure. Yet, the foundation of the structure is solid. And then you build up intrigue and mystery. And it divides and it multiplies and you put your own artistic spin on it. Because think about it, what are we really doing? We're playing with frequency, harmonic, sound. Okay? Creating your own, so this is the point where you create your own canvas of sound, your own personal canvas. This is the start of the conversation. It's your backdrop and your foundational centerpiece to which to lay all the other elements on top. So, depending on how skilled you are or how well you've developed this atmosphere, this sound. I mean, it really doesn't have to be simple. This pad is one instance of Hydrosynth. The synth that I introduced was a basic sawtooth with a filter. That's it. Why does it sound good? Because it's minimal. It doesn't have your mind doesn't have a million things to focus on. It's very simple. There's other reasons for this, and we're going to talk about those later on in the masterclass. But this is just one idea. Because what I'm doing is I'm bringing you closer, bringing your audience closer to you by introducing them to a world that you're trying to create. What does this world look like? Where are we finding ourselves? It could be an environment, it could be a planet, it could be a emotion, it could be a color. Think about this. There are so many ways to go about it. And it only takes one. And from one, divides into 2, 4, 8, it just multiplies. And we're going outwards, you see? That's why it all starts with 1. So that's the first idea. The first idea of conversational ambient is the start of the conversation. Keeping things simple, minimal, creating your own personal canvas of sound. This is your backdrop and your foundational centerpiece. I get asked the question a lot, should I change keys during a song? Up to you. However, whatever you do in that song starts at the beginning. That's your alpha. Whatever ends at omega, that's on you. But you introduce the whole thing by the first 90 seconds. Or 5 minutes, whatever it is, whatever you're trying to create, okay? Pad design and atmosphere design and all of those other things. You can find tons of other videos on my channel on this. But this is the simple idea of arrangement and communication through the elements themselves. Now, two. The conversation opens up and patterns start to emerge. You can begin to develop a language of patterns that introduce new themes into the conversation. New stories can emerge from this language, like the opening chapters of a book leading into a more developed world. This is your opportunity to captivate the listener. So, it starts out, it's just the start of the conversation, simple introductions, and then you begin to wrap those themes around. New stories can emerge. Now, one thing I did not do was mention the album that I'm referencing here. This album is the perfect companion piece to this masterclass, because in this album from Mictech, he introduces these themes and then he spins off of them in a way where you could tell that everything is tying together through note choice, through sound, through frequency response, everything, the filtering, everything it's all connected. And then he'll pull elements away and he'll bring them back, and then it's perfect. It's a perfect companion piece. So I want you to listen to this album. Usually I reference something on my own labels, but today I just want to give you guys another masterclass. You can listen to that album and you'll say, this is exactly what Chris was talking about. So the interplay between your elements. We often call this in music call and response. There's the call and the response. I do this all the time where do 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 do. And you could say that it could be like a delay effect, or it could be two elements that are moving back and forth. That's what call and response is. They do this a lot in jazz music. It's one element makes a call, the other one makes a response. Whether that's the bass calling to the guitar, or the synth calling to the percussion, or the bass calling to the sequence, whatever it is. Those are two elements that are interplaying, and that's call and response. One element plays, the other one answers. One element plays again, the other one answers. You could do this with stereo panning, and you could pan your left and right. So you could have one sequence saying something over here and another one over here. You could do it through filtering. You could have one that's totally cut to like a 800 hertz, and then one other one that's all the way open to like 2000. Right? So you could do it in tons of different ways. You could do it by octave, where the lower octave plays and then the upper octave plays. You could do all kinds of things. Using the idea of frequency equals color to paint in the details. Think about that. If frequency was color, how would you paint in those details? The idea that frequency equals color. So you're introducing these new things, right? These new ideas to open up the conversation. And you begin to develop a pattern. Now, listen to what happens to the first two elements when I introduce a third. You hear how this changes the conversation? Something brand new was just introduced and born into existence. But that element feels very familiar because it's almost tied into the first element. How? Because they're interplaying off of each other. Using filtering and frequency and panning. I could pan one left and one right, look. Now we're starting to spin it around your head. Opening up a wider stereo field. The illusion. So sequences can evolve over time, but they can also remain the same. How do we do this? One of the best ways to do this is to use velocity. I am reading the chat, but I'm just focused. I'm not taking questions until the end. So if you guys have questions, save them for the end. Comments? Go ahead. I love hearing from you guys. But questions, we can save for the end. We'll have a Q&A. So sequences can evolve over time but remain the same. Meaning, you can have the same 4 static group of notes, but using velocity to affect filter cut, volume, oscillator shape. That can create auditory interest out of the same 4 notes. So the notes don't change, but when you combine that with something like a really long, we call them glacial LFO, with a really long glacial LFO, it feels like it's changing, but the notes are still staying the same. Does that make sense? From Dawn, it says, it's a conversation in a way what the sounds are having with each other, guided by the sequencer lines. It's a conversation where speakers leave room between the words. Take breaths, pause for dramatic effect. It's also architecture, building mega structures with smaller parts. That is top tier knowledge right there. Building architecture. Now, pattern 3. Articulating on that architecture. Using sound in motion. Articulating using various elements. So, you have the elements now. You've introduced the conversation. You've opened up the conversation and patterns are starting to emerge out of this world. What are you going to do with those elements? Now, one of the best ways that you can articulate on a simple idea is by iterating on that idea over time. So if you have a simple sequence, what if you added 2 or 3 more notes, right? And through velocity, you allowed those notes to just slowly creep in. So you had 4 notes as the base, and then you introduced 3 more, and those slowly start to emerge with velocity, or with some sort of other element, or some sort of interplay, right? You're articulating on that same central theme. So even though you didn't change keys, you didn't change anything about it, because you've articulated it through the synth line itself. It sounds like it's evolving, and it's growing, and it's organic. And that way you didn't even have to change the synthesizer. You didn't even have to introduce you didn't have to make another patch. You just had the same patch that's continually grown and evolved. Easier said than done, but I just want to introduce that thought to you, like maybe everything that I already have is good enough. Maybe what I can do with what I have in front of me is good enough to create something deeply complex, deeply emotional, and captivating with just one synth, with just one line, with just 4 notes. Because you can multiply off that, you can divide it, you can spin in every different direction. Most synths have more than one oscillator. I'm actually using the Euclidean sequencer Pro. Less is more, I agree. So it's using these various elements to really build up a world. And you're gonna hear that when you listen to Mictech. You're gonna hear that. Every element has its place, and it's mixing in and forming itself. It's creating a new world. And he's inviting you into that world. And he's using different elements, whether they're high elements or low elements, whether they're basses or pads or sequences or whatever it is. He's wrapping it around and he's weaving it together. Articulation. Now, one of the most important things about this central idea, and articulation in particular, is that you develop the sound first, and then you add the effects. I've talked about this on the channel several times when it comes to sound design, is that you already know what the effects are gonna do. Therefore, working on the sound first and then the effects gives you a better result, because the effects don't get in the way of the actual sound, okay? Now again, I've literally just thrown these patterns up there, and it doesn't take much. A sawtooth and a 24 dB filter, you cut it off, you add a little bit of filter envelope, and you're done. LFO to the filter, glacial movement, 4/1, 8/1, that's it. It's a simple recipe. It's almost like dough. It's just like yeast, sugar, salt, flour, water, done. Dough. Okay? But then you just continually evolve on that. You iterate on that. It's what you add to it. Okay? So articulation. Because you can hear that now we're really developing this world. Okay? Watch what happens when I introduce the final element. Listen to this. This patch I created last night, and it's for the upcoming pack for the Patreon. Patreon Pack 8. Experimental sequences. So if you want this patch, you know what to do. You can join my Patreon. You hear that? It's called Chamber of Secrets. And it's literally one note. One note. Put into Vital. One note. Separate envelope on oscillator 3, creating that pad, unison set to a minor chord. Movement of the LFOs, creating rhythmic sequences, pitch lock, the whole thing. One note. But as you can hear, the interplay of that third element combined with the first two and the fourth, we are somewhere else now. From where we started, we have a whole conversation. The elements themselves are starting to talk to each other. Okay? So if you can get behind this idea of pulling all of these elements together in a conversation, then you can do anything you want with this conversation as long as you stay within that realm. You only have that realm, therefore you are creating that realm. Like I said in the beginning, in point 1, which was you're creating the canvas and the backdrop and the world that you're creating, and then you build on top of that. That's conversational ambient. It seems very simple when you talk about it, but when you actually put it into practice, it becomes very difficult because you have to hold the listener's attention. You have to introduce new things. You have to give the listener a reason to come back and listen again. You have to hide things underneath things. Elements are covering other elements up subtly. And you only get 25,000 hertz to do that. So think about ways that you can really wrap your listener around, not by building elements with 36 tracks or building, like this crazy wall of sound, but introducing elements that really become almost addictive to listen to. Like it's captivating, hypnotic in a way. A lot of people say Ascendant and Startera and Signs of Light, they're hypnotic in the way that you listen to it and you're like, all of a sudden you just gripped. And that's one of the things that I've always tried to do, especially with my parts of the music, whether I'm doing half of Ascendant or I'm doing my own Startera or making Signs of Life music, is that I'm really trying to capture a feeling, and that feeling translates into my music. The album that I released in 2017, Pathways to Ascension, was like a feeling record. When you listen to the album, you get a feeling and a vibe, because I was really trying to convey that through that album. When you listen to Meridian, it's totally different, but at the same time, you capture that feeling, that essence. You're like, that's that world. That's that world that I'm moving towards. I hope this is all making sense, and I trust that it is, and I trust you guys are receiving it the same way it's being delivered, with honesty, openness, and acceptance. So, we still have 2 more points to go. Let me check in with you guys. So you guys are wondering about the Euclidean Sequencer Pro. It's made by Alchman, and it's an Ableton Live only thing. And I've been using a bunch of different sequencers lately, and I just always fall back on that one because it's really easy to use. There's Riffer, there's Stokas, there's a new one that I'm gonna debut on the channel. So keep on the lookout. You know, there's really not much. There's so much that people don't realize. The Science Circle is exclusively on Patreon. So if you want to join the Science Circle, join my Patreon. And all the notes, every little tidbit of knowledge that I'm kicking down today is all in note form. I'm going to release that as soon as this live stream ends on the Patreon. So if you want to grab it, join the Patreon. You can join for as little as $3 a month and all the way up to coaching. I do one-on-one coaching also on the Patreon. So if you really want to learn more and you want some really interactive help with your music on a personal one-on-one connection, I got your back. So you can sign up for Ambient coaching. You can do it once a month, twice a month, every week, whatever you want. We're building this thing together, okay? So now that we've opened this all up to the conversation, now the conversation is completely open. What's next? Because when you build something up to the point of like complete and total understanding, the way that I do it, the way that I know how to do it, the way that really creates a sort of like personal attachment is through transformation. After you set the stage, introduce the entire conversation, introduce the idea of deconstruction that leads to transformation. This is the idea that through death and rebirth, through deconstruction and reconstruction, it leads to transformation. It can give the listener a feeling that something important is happening and the world that you've created is about to change and evolve. So that world, the world that you are creating, right, is one that you've built up to this point, but now you can start to strip away layer by layer. You can bring it back down to the essence. But not only that, you're introducing the idea that something new is going to come from that. Because when you start removing elements, other musical motifs can start to emerge from that. Watch what happens when I take out the pad and leave only the sequences. See, it's like all of a sudden now the foundation has left the room. And now these two are having an intimate conversation, effectively communicating everything that they have learned. They're trading information. They're giving each other different cues. They're saying, now we're alone. Now we're together. So let's talk very quietly and see what comes of this conversation. We've stepped out of the light into our own private little thing. But this is where you start to hear the different melodies. You start to hear that delay on the sequence, and you start hearing the afterglow. You start hearing the transients of the reverb. And those transients are subconscious, and you can hear them and feel them, and your listener can be like, now I understand. I've walked through the valley, and I emerge on the other side, and now I'm in a whole nother place. Now the mist has come in, everything, it's cold. It's not much light, but we have a light together. We have this thing. And through this thing, we are going to change. We are going to transform. Because you have already introduced this entire conversation, and you've led the listener on this entire journey, and now you are here at this point. Act 4, where things start to evolve, and you'll never, ever be the same again. The openness of space is often the most potent place. Especially after you've taken your listener on a journey, they already feel transformed and healed by what's come before it. Music that brings positivity, that brings mystery, that brings imagination is often a healing experience. So we're slowly bringing our audience back and give them a reason that they want to take the journey back with you time and time again. I'm going to leave one sequence. You hear that reverb? The reverb itself is another element. And it's having its own personal conversation with just one of them. And this is one oscillator with one filter. That's it. Enter Hydrosynth. By taking these ideas and really bringing yourself to a place of honesty and acceptance, this is the kind of music that you can create. And that's why this is an ambient masterclass, because the song and the track and the journey, the personal journey to create music like this is individual, yet you bring everything that you are to the table. And that shines through everything that you create. Therefore, if you take that step, if you bring yourself to that level, if you understand the art in which you are creating, everything can be magic. It can all be part of that greater mystery and that fabric that we all live by each and every day. Point 5. Circular ambient. Bringing it all together. Working within a circular system, meaning one that all of the elements have always been in a circle, can be the central theme for the final act. So instead of thinking about the ambient track as a linear object, what if, because we see things as a linear, we see it on a timeline as linear, it's flat. What if the whole time it's been circle? And your elements that you've introduced along the way have not just been linearly playing off each other. It's more like a circle, and they create angles. Just like the solar system in which you live. Planets create angles to each other. Harmonious angles, disharmonious angles, challenging angles. But they're all connected within one thing, with the sun at the center. So why would you not think about your music as a circle where each element is already tied to all of the others? You were leading your listener to this point all along. But now that we're back, now that we're here, we're completely changed, and somehow everything is different. This is true orchestration. And you are the sound architect, and you are the storyteller. This is your story. How are you going to write it? Ambient music is a conversation between the speakers. But you have to leave room between the words. You can take pause for dramatic effect. The idea of sound architecture, building ambient music from the ground up. This is your story. How are you going to write it? Thank you guys so much for watching. I truly appreciate it. We can do this every Sunday. I'm telling you. We can do this every Sunday. You just have to join my Patreon. I agree. You gotta let the music breathe. 36 simultaneous viewers. Wow, that probably is a new record. Again, if you want the full notes of today's masterclass, they will be available on Patreon right after the completion of this live stream. I am honored to be bringing forth this information. I am honored that you guys choose to spend your time with me. So thank you for your time, your energy, and your presence here today. I truly appreciate it. You're welcome. Indeed. Plenty of food for thought here today. Thank you, Jason. The whole idea behind this channel is to help you evolve and help you grow as a producer in ways that you never possibly imagined. And now that this channel is here, because we haven't even hit, we're coming up on my 1 year anniversary of being on YouTube. Only 1 year. And now I'm at this point where I'm doing master classes on the one thing that I feel most passionate about in life, period. And I'm honored to be doing this for you so I can see you become the phoenix that's risen from the ashes. That's the whole goal, is to watch each and every one of you transform so you can bring your gifts to the world, so you can bring that sonic gift that you have been given to everyone else. And I can sit back and I can enjoy the music that you've created because you've taken what I've said to heart and you've applied it, and now you are fully transformed and healed. That's it. You go through the fire and the flames only to rise from the ashes once again. My name is Chris from Signs of Life. Thank you again for watching. Again, if you want more masterclass tutorials every Sunday, join my Patreon and we'll make it a real thing. We'll make it a reality. As always, Keep your heads in the clouds and your feet planted firmly on the ground. My name is Chris from Science of Life, and I'll see you all on the other side.